Now come to these lines. The three of them went out of the shop. The three men over here are Defarge, Miss Laurie and Miss Manette. So they went out of the shop into a stinking black courtyard. Courtyard refers to open area. Surrounding it was a great pile of houses in which great number of people lived. So that was a scene there. So there was many houses, one on another, and many people lived there. Defarge bent and kissed Miss Manette's hand, but there was no kindness in his face. So this is the personality of Defarge. He had a very hard, harsh expression on his face. There was no kindness, though he showed courtesy. Holding one's hand, the female's hand, and kissing is a courtesy or respect shown to a lady. Okay, so but as Defarge did so, there was no kindness on his face. He had become a secretive, angry, and a very dangerous man. They made their way across the dirty, tiled entrance and up the stairs. So this is they were where they were going. They were going to that room where Mr. Manette, that is Dr. Manette, was kept. So that place, see how when they crossed that area, they had to cross through the dirty tiled entrance, and which led to the stairs. Is he alone? Said Mr. Laurie as they climbed. Of course he's alone. Who should be with him? Is he always alone then? Yes. Has he changed a great deal? Changed? Changed. Over here with this exclamatory sign that shows that he's completely a changed personality. So here children, just keep a note on each line. Is he alone? These are the words of Laurie. The Defarge. His Laurie again. His Defarge. Has he changed a great deal? This is again Mr. Laurie. And here Defarge says he's changed. Defarge's face tightened in anger as they climbed more floors past open doors where people sat in the dark, miserable rooms. Just imagine the house there, so many people living around, and when they have to cross the corridors, the rooms of their rooms are open, have their doors of the rooms are open, and the people are sitting, and their state is quite miserable. Miserable over here means very poor, and their rooms also looked very miserable. Miss Manette had not said a word. Over here you can see Miss Manette still in a shock to find out that her father is alive. Mr. Laurie now almost had to carry her along. That means he almost had to pull her along because Miss Manette was in a shocking state, as she had shortly come to know about her father's presence. Her body had gone weak and she was trembling. She was very nervous. Courage, dear miss. The worst will soon be over. So these are the words of Mr. Laurie. Now he tries to, encourage Miss Manette. He tells her that she should have some courage, and whatever the worst will soon get over. As they reached the 5th floor, they saw the three men Defarge had been talking to earlier, looking into a room through a small window. Mr. Laurie was surprised and concerned. So, what did Mr. Laurie observe? That the three men who were talking to this Monsieur Defarge, they were peeping through the window into Mr. Manette's room, Dr. Manette's room. And this made him a bit surprised, and he felt concerned that how could they do so? Do you make a show of Monsieur Manette, sir? Now over here you can see a slight anger in the words of Mr. Laurie. He says that, do you think that Mr. Manette, or has Mr. Manette become a source of entertainment to the people? Okay. Defarge was not put out by Mr. Laurie's quiet anger. Put out over here means was not at all affected. Okay. And by Mr. Laurie's quiet anger over here refers to that though he was a bit angry, but he did not let it out, but that was really in a very controlled state. I show him to a chosen few. So these are the words of Defarge. Defarge says that I do show him to the selective people. Is that the right thing to do? I think it is. Now over here I italicized. He says I. Because it is his thinking that it is the right thing to do so. Who are the few? Whose words are these? Mr. Lorry speaks this. Real men, men like myself, to whom the sights of this poor man may do good. Men called jacks. Enough? You are English. You do not understand. So here, Defarge says, through these words we come to know that this man Defarge, though he is a tough man and he is expressionless and very harsh personality, still he supports Mr. Manette, Dr. Manette. Okay, he says, when he says who are the few, he replies the few whom he refers to, that who he shows to the few he shows, that means he refers to those true men, the men like myself, that he calls himself a real man, a true person, to whom the sights of this poor man, sights means poor man refers to Dr. Manette, may do good. For them, for such people, that this, even if we look at Dr. Manette, it will be a good done to us. Men called jacks. Over here we come to know that these jacks, the revolutionaries, are actually the supporters of Dr. Manette. Enough, your English. Then he ends up, he says, enough. Your English, you do not understand. As your English, you will not understand what I mean. Defarge, who wished the conversation to end, took a large key out of his pocket. He was about to put it out into the door when Mr. Lorry touched his arm. Why do you keep the door locked? These are the words of Lorry. Because he lived so long in prison that he would go mad with fear if he were not locked up. So he, over here, Monsieur Defarge, he justifies the reason why the door is kept locked. Dr. Manette's door is always locked. He says that he has been living in prison for such a long time, so he would go mad with fear if he were not locked up. If he was set free, he would become mad. Mr. Lorry said nothing and followed the large man into the dark room. Large man refers to Defarge. For a moment they saw nothing. Then at the back, next to the only window, they saw a white-haired figure sitting on a bench making shoes. Defarge was the first to speak to the bent figure. And who was this bent figure? It was Dr. Manette. So what did they see inside the room? They saw that next to the only window, there was only one window in the room, and they saw a white-haired figure. And what was he doing? He was sitting on a bench and he was making shoes. Okay, and Defarge was the first person to speak. Or you can just pick out the words from here to write this character sketch of Dr. Manette. So he was white-haired figure. Okay. Now, good day. This is how Defarge begins a conversation with Dr. Manette. The man did not look up from his work. He just said, "Good day. Still hard at work, I see." So these are the words of Defarge. He said, "Still you seem to be too much engrossed in work." Engrossed means too much busy in your work. The white head lifted for a moment. Who is this white head? Dr. Manette. "Yes, I'm working." These are the words of Dr. Manette. The old man's voice had so lost its life that it was like a voice from underground. Defarge went to the window. Now, old man's voice had so lost. Why his voice was lost? That his voice seemed to be suppressed, or you can use another word like the voice seemed to be sunk. It did not come out fully. Okay, as it appeared as if his voice was coming out from the underground. And why was it so? This was the reason, because he had not spoken to anyone since so many years of his imprisonment. Right? So Defarge, he went to the window. Why did he go to the window? He went to the window to open it. "I want to let in more light. Is that all right?" So Defarge, what did he say? That just when he went to that window and he opened it, he said, "I want to let in more light. I just want more light into the room. Is it all right? If you must." So these are the words of Dr. Manette. Okay, children, in this video we are going to read up till here. In the next video, we'll continue with the next part.